It's time to say goodbye to 2022 and hello to the next big offseason competition. We'll get you ready for a January trip to sunny South Florida. Plus, we look back on the top moments from the year that was. That's next on Game Central. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Game Central presented by Guaranteed Rate, the official mortgage company of the Noble CrossFit Games. 2022 is coming to an end, and that means it is time to start looking ahead to 2023. And the next big competition on the schedule is Wodapalooza, and that takes place in early January. Once again, it will take place at Bayfront Park in Miami, Florida from January 12th to the 15th. And this will be the 11th year that Wodapalooza has been held. The schedule is changing for 2023. For the first time, the teams and individuals will be competing on different days. The individuals will take the floor on January 12th and 13th, and then the teams get going the next 2 days. This change allows athletes to compete in both competitions instead of having to choose just one like they have in the past. Here are some of the notable men who are competing as individuals. Some of them are also competing on a team. Pat Vellner and Smiths and Panchiks are two of them. Vellner returns to defend his title from last year. Garard was also supposed to compete last year, but had to withdraw due to an illness at the last minute. This will be the first time that Roman Khrennikov will compete in Miami. He has had a great year so far in 2022. Khrennikov finished second at the CrossFit Games back in August in his first time competing in Madison. He followed that up with a 5th place finish at the Rogue Invitational that saw him win an event and finish inside the top 7 in 7 of the 10 events. Over on the women's side, 3 up-and-coming youngsters will be in the field. Olivia Kerstetter, Freya Moosbrugger, who finished 10th at Wodapalooza last year, and Olivia Sulik. Dani Speegle is also scheduled to compete. She took 5th in Miami back in January. Sara Sigmundsdottir will be in the field as well. She competed here back in January as she was looking to return from a knee injury, but she withdrew after 3 events after aggravating that injury. Sigmundsdottir is hoping that 2023 is a comeback season for her. She has not competed at the games since 2020, and her last 3 appearances in Madison have not been up to her standards either. Sigmundsdottir's best finish during that span was 19th in 2019. There are going to be plenty of great storylines to watch at Wodapalooza in Miami in January. And for more on what you should have your eyes on when that competition rolls around, here's Lauren Smith.
With Wodapalooza on the horizon, here are some of the elite storylines that you should be watching out for. First and foremost, we have some high-profile Miami debutantes this season in Roman Khrennikov and Garard. What is more exciting than seeing the 2022 CrossFit Games podium finishers competing under those Miami lights for the first time? I am not too sure. And whilst Ricky was in attendance last year, a nasty bout of food poisoning kept him from competing. So this time he plans on doing the double, both the indie and the team competition, which means we get to see him twice. Roman, of course, following that confirmation of his visa and ability to travel into the US, means that we are finally able to see him at these top-level competitions stateside. This is a man who's going to be keen to get his first major elite win under his belt since Dubai in 21, and he's more than capable of doing so. If 2 Canadian CrossFit heavyweights were not enough for you, how about if I told you there would be 3, but in the same-sex threes team competition? Jeff Adler, Pat Vellner, and Brent Fikowski have joined forces to give the people what they want, and I'm pretty sure what people want is some good old-fashioned Canadian muscle. With the announcement that the schedule would allow elite athletes to compete in both indie and team across the weekend, it's opened up the team's roster with some of the most impressive collaborations that we've seen in the sport. It arcs back to those days of super teams. Jeff, Pat, and Brent will be coming up against the likes of last year's defending champions, the boys, Travis Mayer, Noah Olson, and Chandler Smith, and a mayhem team featuring Rich Froning, Tyler Christoffel, and Samuel Knoyer, just to name a few. On the women's side, we'll see 2 European super teams. 2022's Rogue Invitational winner, Laura Horvath, is teaming up with Gabby Magala and Jamie Simmons, and Jamie we're giving an honorary European status to because she's currently living in Wales with her husband, Elliot. What about last year's individual WZA winner, Emma McQuaid? She comes back alongside Strength and Depth semi-final winner, Jacqueline Dahlstrom, and Solveig Sagardottir. They'll be up against some of the best of the US, including 2016's individual winner Brooke Wells, who's competing alongside Amanda Barnhart and Christy O'Connell. Not to mention the addition of Danielle Brandon to a formidable pairing of Andrea Nisler and Taylor Williamson, who placed second in the May Femme team alongside Hayley Adams last year. Another thing to get us excited is the youth coming through CrossFit at the moment. It continues to astound us, and the latest young gun to shock and awe is 2 times CrossFit Games age group winner Olivia Kerstetter. She's featuring in her second elite level competition. The 17-year-old had her first showing at the Rogue Invitational when she stepped up to the elite ranks, placing 16th. And I guess she'll be looking to use WZA to gauge her place in the elite field, with one eye on the CrossFit Games season ahead. But of course, we saved the best until last, and we're going to see 2 of CrossFit's famous families go head-to-head in the same-sex threes. Ben Alec and Dane Smith versus Saxon Scott and Spencer Panchik. The Panchiks are making their 3rd Miami appearance as a team, and there's not a huge amount of need to introduce the unbelievable career of Scott Panchik, but you know what, I'm going to do it anyway. 9 games appearances, the highest placing of 4th, but that was 3 times, and most recently in 2019. He's one of the sport's greatest athletes. His brother Saxon has got 5 games appearances, the highest being 5th in 2021. Then there's Spencer, who made his games debut in 2022 and finished 20th. And what about the Smiths? They have experience on the Wodapalooza floor together from back in 2016. Dane has 3 regionals appearances, Alec 3 games appearances, including a 2nd place finish with Team Krypton. Now, Ben has 8 games appearances, 4 podiums in that time, and of course, that emphatic CrossFit Games win back in 2015. These are 2 huge families within the sport, and just from a fan point of view, to see them throw down against each other for the first time since 2016 is going to be a really cool element to this year's competition. There is so much coming up, and January is just the start. I'll see you under the lights.
Thanks so much, Lauren. We go from taking a look ahead to taking a look back. And now that 2022 is winding down, it's time to recap some of the top moments from this past game season. And for me, you got to go back to the capital event at the 2022 Noble CrossFit Games, one of the most ambitious events that we have ever seen. And it provided us with some great images and some fantastic moments. And I bet Tommy Marquez will have more on one of those moments. Here he is with his top moments from 2022.
Thanks, Sean. Yes, your guess is correct, but you'll have to wait and see where it falls on this list. If you factor in all the competition from all divisions competing from February to August, there were 49 active days of competition this season. That means more than a month and a half's worth of days where people were actively competing and doing tests within the CrossFit Games season. And with so many days like that, it's really hard to narrow the list down to just 5, but here goes. Number 5 on my list starts at the beginning stage of the season, the Open, and the announcement of 22.3 when CrossFit Hendersonville took on the team from CrossFit Reykjavik. This is when it felt like the Open announcements were truly back hitting their full stride inside the walls of an affiliate where they belong. Interestingly enough, the last time that the CrossFit Games team officially hosted an announcement in an affiliate, it was back in 2018 at 18.5, where you guessed it, they were also at CrossFit Reykjavik. But this time we got to see not 1, but 2 affiliates participate. And watching from home, seeing 2 communities thousands of miles away, packed with people cheering on their people that they share barbells, classes, and countless hours of time with, it just hit differently. And it captured the spirit of the Open in a way that was fitting for the final week. Number 4 now, and we're moving on in the season 2 semifinals. And if you followed Will Morad's story at all, you know that if anything, the man is resilient. From a misdiagnosed autoimmune disorder that led to an early retirement, to his wife's cancer diagnosis shortly after his 20th place finish at the 2021 Games, Morad has continued to press forward in the face of adversity throughout his career. That's why, when he stepped onto the floor for the finale of the Syndicate Crown, King Kong 2.0 as it was dubbed, the fact that he was 59 points behind 5th and more importantly, 80 points back of 4th place James Sprague was just another day in the office for Morad. He goes out and wins the event, making up 81 points on Sprague and jumps from 8th all the way up to 5th and snagging that final game spot just 1 point ahead of Sprague. It's the single largest comeback in CrossFit Games qualifying history, and seeing him share the moment it was announced that he qualified with his wife, who was declared cancer-free just 2 months prior, was just poetic. The next three are coming from the games, and my number 3 moment was the performance from Lechem du Plessis in Rinse and Repeat. For context, the event was the first in CrossFit Games history to be standardized across all divisions across the board. We're talking all age groups, adaptive divisions, you name it. Du Plessis is a 2-time podium finisher in the women's multi-extremity division, formerly known as the neuromuscular division. A former collegiate netball athlete in South Africa, she also has a water polo background. And not only was she the only woman in her division to complete all the rounds of the event, her 111 total calories would have tied her for 28th in the event in the individual division. When recounting her experience, Du Plessis noted how when she noticed that she was the last woman standing in the event, she began to feel the emotion well up inside of her. And the minute the final buzzer sounded for the event, you could see it all physically come pouring out of her as she began to sob on the pool deck. It is without a doubt one of the seminal moments in the adaptive competition at the games, and one of the reasons why having a standardized test like this was so monumental. In the runner-up spot, my number 2 moment for the season for 2022 could easily be number 1 in most years, but let's set the stage here. It's Saturday night. Inside the Coliseum, a huge curveball has just been thrown in the form of the largest sandbags most of us have probably ever come across. Only 18 points separate the top 3 men overall on the leaderboard. Justin Medeiros has just taken the white jersey off of Ricky Garard for the first time in the prior event. Ricky is 11 points back of Justin in second, and Roman Khrennikov sits 7 points back of Ricky in third. As the ladder progresses and athletes fell by the wayside, the 330-pound bag gets rolled out and the number of platforms reduced to 3. It just happened to work out that all 3 of them ended up standing side by side in line to take on that 330 bag at the same time. The entire Coliseum got on their feet, and in that moment, it felt like the 2022 title and the balance of power in the men's division was sitting inside that bright red bag. In a tremendous display of grit and determination, both Garard and Medeiros would hoist the bag, and eventually Medeiros would win out amongst the 3 and expand his lead via the tiebreak, and everyone would be left wondering how something as simple as a bag of sand could be the impetus for such an exciting event that no one saw coming. For my top moment of the season, Sean mentioned it earlier, and it comes from the iconic Capitol event. During the second and final heat, every athlete had finished except for one. Rebecca Fuselier stood alone on the Capitol steps, struggling mightily with the Husafell bag. There was no time cap to save her, and after a brief check-in from Boz, suddenly she was surrounded by hundreds of fans that were originally there just to spectate along the sides of the Capitol steps, and they were given the okay to close in around her to lift her spirits and carry her to the finish. You can't manufacture moments like this, ones that transcend the competition itself and dispel the zero-sum nature of sport at its highest levels. This moment was the magical middle of that Venn diagram of sport and methodology, where everyone standing there at the Capitol steps knew exactly how Rebecca Fuselier felt: exhausted, frustrated, beaten, but not defeated. And the reality is that most of us are in this position quite often in our fitness and training journeys. Kudos to Boz and the crew for recognizing the moment and sensing the energy in the crowd and allowing them to step in and take part in that moment and help will her to the finish line. The imagery from that moment is second to none, and if anyone asks me what CrossFit is, I could easily point them to that moment and remind them that it's just an extension of what happens in thousands of affiliates in hundreds of countries and communities around the world. That right there is the good stuff. So Sean, not only was it one of my top moments, it was the top moment of the season for me. I honestly still get goosebumps just thinking about it, and it's a moment that everybody should go back and watch if you haven't already seen it.
Thank you so much, Tommy, and thank you to everyone who had a hand in pulling off the 2022 season. It was an absolute blast, and I can't wait to see what is ahead in 2023. Well, one thing we do know, the sites and dates for the 2023 semifinal competitions. Here are the sites that will host all the qualifying events for the CrossFit Games. There are going to be just 7 of them in 2023. North America will only have 2 as opposed to 4 the last couple of years. Europe will also have just 1 semifinal instead of 2. All the other continents will remain the same. There are some new cities on the list. Orlando, Florida, and Pasadena, California will be the locations for the North American semifinals. Berlin will be the location for Europe, and in Australia, Pat Rafter Arena in Brisbane will host the Oceania semifinal. For a list of all the dates for each semifinal, you can head to games.crossfit.com. The 2023 Noble CrossFit Open begins on February 16th, and we have the list of equipment that you will need to participate. There are a couple of things to note about this list. Kettlebells have been included. You'll need wall space for movements including, but not limited to, wall walks, handstand push-ups, and wall ball shots. The climbing ropes and GHDs are on the list. However, they will not be required for the Open, but they could be used in later stages of the competition. For more information, you can read the entire article about the equipment list for 2023 at games.crossfit.com. Registration for the 2023 Noble CrossFit Open is now open. You can head to games.crossfit.com to sign up. And remember, every episode of Miles to Madison is available now on the CrossFit Games YouTube channel. Thanks for watching this edition of Game Central, everybody, presented by Guaranteed Rate, the official mortgage company of the Noble CrossFit Games. Have a safe and happy new year, and we will talk to you next time.